Good afternoon, my name is Simba. I'm going to be taking you through this tutorial for Economics 201 in preparation for your assignment. Alright, so what you're going to do is I'm just going to run through the slides looking at some important concepts that you need to remember. Then after that, I'm going to move on to the assignment, looking at the important things and how you should tackle the assignment. Alright, so when you look at economics, I'm sure most of you have done economics before, right? We look at economics, we need to be able to define what economics is. So economics is basically deals with the fact that our resources are limited, but our wants and our needs are unlimited. So what do we need to do? We need to be able to prioritize. We need to be able to make choices. But when you make those choices come at a cost. That cost is what we refer to as opportunity cost. So economics basically deals with how society addresses the issue of scarcity. So scarcity happens at an individual level, scarcity happens at household level, scarcity happens at national level. Right? At individual level, we're saying sometimes there are a lot of things that you want to do, but you might find that your income does not allow you to do everything that you want. It does not allow you to buy all the goods and services that you want. At household level, you might want to go for a holiday, but it's at the same time your kids might want to go to school, you might want to buy a new car and so forth. So you now need to be able to prioritize. You now need to make a choice. What are you going to choose? But that choice comes at a cost, which is opportunity cost. Alright, so that is what basically economics is all about. If you look at, there are several definitions of economics, but they all address the issue of limited resources versus unlimited ones. Right, as we proceed, we are going to define the important concepts of opportunity cost, choice, and scarcity, and we are going to use a PPC to aid our explanation. Right, we are also going to look at some concepts of economics that are important, and also look at the four main factors of production, right, which are the resources that you're basically referring to, which exist in limited quantities. Right, so when you look at the PPC, which is what is in our assignment, it is important to first understand what a PPC is, because from the definition of the PPC, that is where you're going to get an understanding of everything that is associated with the PPC. When you look at the PPC, we are saying a PPC is a curve that shows us a combination of two goods that can be produced in an economy if we are using our resources fully and efficiently. So any point that is on the PPC there shows us combinations of the two goods. In our example here, that is on the slide, our two goods are potatoes and fish. Right. So we make an assumption that our society is only producing two goods. So this is just trying to simplify reality. But you know that in the real world, a society cannot only produce two goods. There are thousands and thousands of goods that can be produced, but you cannot put thousands of goods on a graph. So how do we represent that? We simply put two goods. So we are assuming that we are using all our resources to produce these two goods. But when you also look at the PPC, we have two extreme points. If you look at point A and point F, right, those are extreme points on the PPC where we are saying if we are at point A, we are using all our resources to produce 100 kgs of potatoes and we are producing none of the fish. Again, if we are at point F, we are using all our resources only to collect fish and none of the potatoes. Then you can have other points that are inside point B, point C, point D, point E, that are inside where we now have some resources being used to produce potatoes, some being used to produce fish. So any point that is on the PPC, point A, point B, point C, point D, point E, and point F, they are all efficient and attainable points. We are saying, given the resources that we have, it is possible for us to be able to produce at point A, at point B, at point C, and point D, E, and F. That is the best. Remember, a PPC is called a frontier or a boundary. So that is the best that we can do with our resources. So all those points that are on the PPC are efficient and attainable. Right. How does the concept of opportunity cost now come into play? Right. Opportunity cost it can be defined as the value, the best value of an alternative that could have been taken but was not taken, or the value of the best foregone opportunity. So let's say we are starting from point A, moving to point B. We have to calculate what is the value of the sacrifice. How many units are we giving up for potatoes for us to get one basket of fish? So the opportunity cost will be the 5 kgs of potatoes that we are going to sacrifice, the difference between 100 and 95. That is the opportunity cost of moving from point A to point B. We can also calculate opportunity cost moving from point A to point D. So the difference there will be 100, the difference between 100 and 70, which is 30. So the 30 kgs of potatoes that you sacrifice is the opportunity cost of moving from point A to point D. Right. Then it is also possible you can come from point F going upwards. If you are moving from point F going upwards, it means that in this case now, we are taking away resources from the production of fish so that we can produce potatoes. So moving from for example, moving from point F to point D, it means that we are sacrificing 2 baskets of fish, which is the difference between 5 and 3, for us to attain 70 kgs of potatoes. So that is how we can use the PPC to explain the concept of opportunity cost. When you also look at the PPC, it is important to note that a PPC is concave in shape. Right? That shape there is important because that is what explains the increasing opportunity cost as we go down the PPC. Right? As we move from point A, moving to point B to point C, we are transferring resources from the production of potatoes to the production of fish. As we go down this PPC, our resources become more suitable in the production of fish. Right? That is when now the specialization and the division of labor comes into play. So the moment that our resources now are more suitable for the production of fish, it means that as we are moving down the PPC there, the opportunity cost continues to increase because we now need to give up more potatoes for us to get an additional basket of fish. So that is why we have increasing opportunity cost going down the curve. That is why the PPC is also non-linear. It is concave in shape. So when you draw your curve in the assignment, make sure that you bring out that nice concave shape because that is very important. Then we have points that are to the right of the PPC. For example, point G. Point G illustrates scarcity of resources because we are saying the best that you can do is on the PPC. Point G, we have more of both fish and potatoes, but without us sacrificing something. So we are not able to reach point G in the short term because our resources will only allow us to be at PPC AF. Right. So point G shows scarcity of resources, whereby we are saying our wants and our needs are unlimited, but our resources are limited. So any point that is to the right or beyond the PPC shows scarcity. Okay, as long as it is to the right. Then you can have another point like point H. That is anywhere inside the PPC. Any point that is inside the PPC will illustrate the fact that we are not using our resources to their best potential or to their full capacity there. Point H therefore illustrates unemployment of resources or inefficient. even though it is attainable, but we are not being efficient, we are not using our resources to the full potential. It means that at point H, maybe we have people that are unemployed, we have factories that are not being used, we have machines that are lying idle, right? So that is unemployment of resources, which is illustrated by any point that is inside the PPC. So any point that is inside the PPC shows us unemployment of resources or inefficiency, even though it is attainable. Then we move on. We can have a nice summary there, whereby we are saying all attainable combinations are points that are on or inside the PPC. We can reach those points with our resources. We also have unattainable combinations. These are points that are beyond the PPC, for example, point G. Efficient combinations are all points that are on the PPC, point A, point B, point C, point D, and point F. Inefficient combinations, all points that are inside the PPC, for example, point H. Then we want to look at now increasing potential output, where now our PPC can shift outwards. Right? We want to see the reasons. So in the long run, things might change. Right? So you can actually find that workers have now become more efficient in the production of either one of the goods or in both goods. For example, you could find that there's an improved production technique that has been discovered. You can also find that the workers have become more educated, they've become more skilled, productivity has increased, or even weather conditions could improve, or more resources could be discovered. Right? So in this case, we have our capital goods and our consumer goods. You can see that our original PPC is the blue PPC, which is AB. But the production of capital goods increases, right? So we move to a new PPC, which is AC. But what you can see from this PPC is the production of consumer goods remains the same, but the production of capital goods has increased. So what this basically means is, maybe in this society we have discovered a new production technique, but that production technique is only assisting in the production of capital goods, with the production of consumer goods remaining the same. Or workers can become more skilled in the production of capital goods, but the production of consumer goods remaining the same. Right? And several other reasons that I have mentioned before. Right? Again, it could be opposite. The production of capital goods remains the same, but the production of consumer goods is increasing. For example, new skills the workers might become more skilled in the production of consumer goods, but the production of capital goods remains the same. Or new production techniques in the production of consumer goods are discovered, whilst the production of capital goods remain the same. So we move from PPC BA to PPC ABG. All right. Then we can have a situation whereby there is an increase in the production of both goods. Maybe more resources have been discovered. Production increases in both industries. We are going to have an increase in the production of both goods, whereby our PPC will move from PPC AB to PPC EF. Again, if you are asked to illustrate economic growth on the PPC, this is how you illustrate economic growth. Because remember, economic growth is an increase in the production of all goods and services in the economy. All our goods and services in this case are represented by the two goods, consumer goods and capital goods. So if both of them are increasing, it means that this community or this economy is already achieving economic growth. But the movements can also be in the opposite direction. Now the causes will also be in reverse. But in this case, we are looking at increases in potential output. Right, so this is it with the PPC. It is an important concept that you need to understand. All right. Then we move on to the factors of production. Our assignment again talks about the factors of production. Our 4 factors of production are basically your land, your capital, entrepreneurship, and your human resources. So we need to look at these 4 factors of production. So we start with natural resources. So our natural resources, we are basically talking about those free gifts of nature that we have that we need to use sparingly. If we don't utilize these resources well, we are going to find that future generations might not be able to enjoy these resources. So we talk about sustainable development, whereby we are saying what the current generation is enjoying should also be enjoyed by future generations. So we need to be able to preserve the natural resources. When you look at the natural resources there, it is not only the quantity that is important, the quality of those natural resources is also important, because that is what is going to determine the quality and the quantity of the goods and services that you are going to produce. So with the natural resources, the free gifts of nature, we're basically looking at things like your water, your forests, you're talking about your minerals, gold, chrome, and so forth. So you need to be able to conserve these resources. It is also important to remember the income that is associated, or the remuneration that is associated with each factor of production. So for natural resources, which we sometimes refer to land, the remuneration or the income is called rent. Then we move on to labor. Right. When you talk about labor there, we are talking about human effort, which is both physical and mental, that we put in the production of goods and services. Right. We are talking about the workers, right, that we need. It is important to understand that the quantity is important, quantity determined maybe by population growth, but the quality is also important. What skills do those workers have? What is their level of productivity, right? How much of this labor should we use in our production processes, right? We're looking at things like unemployment coming into the picture as well. So the remuneration to labor is salaries and wages. Again, the quality and the quantity is important. We move on to our next resource, which is capital. So when you talk about capital, we are referring to all man-made goods and goods that we use in the production of other goods. So this is the capital that can come in form of factories that you need, computers, desks, machinery, vehicles. So when you look at these capital goods, these are goods that experience depreciation as we utilize them, right? There are going to be some depreciation, which is some wear and tear that occurs to those capital goods. When you look at the capital, it is also important to take note that in economics, money is not capital. Money is a means of acquiring capital, but by itself, it is not capital. Unlike in accounting, where we say capital is money. The remuneration to capital is interest. Then we look at our last factor of productions there, but not the least in terms of importance, which is entrepreneurship, which is the ability to combine all the other factors of production to produce goods and services. When you talk about the entrepreneurs, you're talking about the people that have the ability to combine those resources, the people that are able to identify gaps that are in the market, the people that are able to take risks, the people that are able to forego their comfort of their daily job so that they can come up with new innovations and new inventions. So the remuneration to entrepreneurship is profit. So for the economy to grow, you need a lot of entrepreneurs. Right, so these are the 4 factors of production that you need to remember, which is also part of the assignment. Right, then we move on to the 3 central economic questions: the what, the how, and the for whom. So the 3 central economic questions are basically saying, what type of goods and services should we produce? This is sometimes referred to as the output question. Right, we have different goods and services: consumer goods, intermediate goods, public goods, and so forth. We also have the how part. How are we going to produce those goods, which is also referred to as the input question. How are we going to produce our goods and services? Are we going to use more labor than machines? If we use more labor, what are the implications? Right? If we use labor, it means that we are going to be able to reduce the unemployment rate. But what does it do to efficiency? What does it do to economic growth? If we use more machines, it means that machines will allow us to work at a faster pace. It allows us to produce more. But what are the implications to the economy, to the society, in terms of unemployment and employment of labor, right? So that is decisions that the policymakers need to be looking at. Then we look at the last one, which is for whom are we producing those goods and services, which is sometimes referred to as the distribution question, right? How are we going to distribute those goods and resources? Who is going to get what? Right? Is it only those that afford that are going to get the goods? That is when you see the government now stepping in, trying to redistribute wealth, giving social grants, child support, and so forth. But this is sort of emotional to certain people. Some feel like people do not deserve those social grants. But at the same time, we also look at the fact that there are certain people who are disadvantaged, who need those that kind of help. When you look at these three central economic questions, you also need to look at how they are addressed in the different economic systems. So our basic economic systems, we have the traditional economic system, the command, and the market. Then the fourth one, which is a combination of these three, is the mixed economic system. When you look at the economic systems, it is important just to look at the characteristics, the advantages and the disadvantages of each. Those are the things that are important, right? So you look at the traditional economic system whereby things have been done according to generations. People know what they are supposed to do, but there's no growth. Production is only for subsistence level and so forth. You look at a command system, sometimes called a centrally planned economy, where everything is done according to rules of the government. So there's central planning there, what to produce, how to produce, and for whom are we producing for, all that is determined by the government, right? You look at countries like North Korea and Russia, when it was still called the Soviet Union, we had a command system. Then you have the market system, sometimes referred to as a capitalist system, where now the forces of supply and demand are coming into play. Prices are very important in this case. There's a lot of innovation. People are motivated by their self-interest, right? Motivated by profits. So there's a lot of growth because there's a lot of competition as well, which is good for the consumers, right? Then we look at interrelationship between the household and the firms. Then we're also going to look at specialization and division of labor. So we have when you look at our basic circular flow, right, we have a two-sector model where we have our households and the firms. So we are saying when you are doing this analysis, we start by looking at the households. The households are the owners of the factors of production. They are the people that own the land, the capital, the interest, and they are also the capital, the labor, and they are also the entrepreneurs. They are going to sell these factors of production to the firms so that the firms can produce. Remember, the firms are the production unit in the economy. So there is going to be production that takes place. When you talk about production, we are basically referring to the physical transformation of the factors of production to produce goods and services. So the factors of production are sold to the firms through the factor market. The firms produce the goods and services which they are going to sell to the households through the goods market. So when you look at the flow of goods and the factors, it is in a clockwise direction, right? When we now look at the flow of the income, so when the households sell the factors of production, they are going to get an income in form of salaries and wages, interest, and so forth. That is the same income that they are going to use to buy goods and services produced by the firms. The firms get any income in form of sales revenue, which they are going to use to buy the factors of production. Now we are moving in an anti-clockwise direction. It is also important to understand specialization and division of labor. When you look at production, it is characterized by specialization, whereby we are saying a person focuses on a particular production process in the production of goods and services. So modern economies, modern production methods are broken into parts. If you look at a car assembly, there are several jobs that are performed. So we divide those jobs into stages or parts. So that is what we refer to as division of labor. When you now look at specialization, people become more and more, as they work more and more on the same stage or on the same part, they become specialists in those parts, which is what allows countries to be able to trade, because countries or companies can specialize in the production of a certain good, which now they become very efficient in. Then they focus on that good. They can now trade with other countries that are also specializing in different goods. So everyone specializes in activities where the opportunity costs are lowest. Then they can trade with another country there. In that way, everyone becomes better off. Specialization is what enables growth in the economy, according to Adam Smith. All right, then we move on to demand, supply, and prices. So when you look at demand, supply, and prices, it is important first to look at the determinants of demand. We explained the difference between demand and quantity demanded. We need to be able to differentiate between a movement along the demand curve and the shift of the demand curve. You find that in a multiple choice in the examination, these are things that they will be trying to see whether you know the difference. Look at the determinants of quantity supplied, differentiate between a movement along the supply curve and a shift of the supply curve. Look at market equilibrium, consumer surplus, and producer surplus. So we have our demand function. Remember, we can explain demand using equations. We can use graphs, we can use words, or you can use tables. So in this case, we are going to use an equation which summarizes our quantity demanded is a function of price of the specific product, price of related goods, price of the income of the consumer, taste and preferences, the size of the household, and those dashes there representing other determinants of demand that are not mentioned. So we look at the first determinant there, which is the price of the specific product. So when you look at the price of the specific product there, how does that influence quantity demanded? We are saying the higher the price of the product, the lower the quantity demanded, right? Which is basically the law of demand. The law of demand states that ceteris paribus, or holding all other things constant, the higher the price, the lower the quantity that is demanded, right? So that is the first determinant. Then the price of related goods and services, we are basically referring to the substitutes and the complements. What happens to the price of tennis rackets or to the price of tennis balls? What happens to the demand for tennis balls if the price of tennis rackets increases? Right, those are complements, goods that we use jointly. Or what happens to the demand for tea if the price of coffee increases? Those are substitutes, goods that we can use one in place of the other, right? So those are related goods. You also look at household's income over a period, right? With income, they were basically saying the higher the income, the greater the demand, the higher the demand as well. But you're going to find that this applies to goods that we refer to as normal goods. There are certain goods whereby if your income increases, your demand for that good is going to decrease. Those are goods that we refer to as inferior goods. For example, if you are used to buy second-hand clothes, right? When your income increases, you start buying brand new clothes. It simply means that the demand for the second-hand clothes is going to decrease, because your income has gone up. So in that case, second-hand clothes become inferior goods. Then you have taste and preferences of the consumer, right? If the consumers are preferring a certain product, then the demand is going to increase. If that product is in fashion, it means people are going to buy more of that product, right? Or if it's music that everyone is enjoying, then you're going to find that there's a higher demand for that type of music. The number of people in the household, the more the people that we have, the higher the demand. Ceteris paribus, holding all other things constant. Then we have other possible influences of demand, for example, seasonality and so forth. Alright. Then it is important for us to be able to understand the difference between a movement along the demand curve and a shift of the demand curve. A movement along the demand curve is caused by a change in the price of the specific product. This illustrates a change in quantity demanded. So there's only one determinant that will result in a movement along the demand curve when it changes, which is basically the price of the specific product. All the other determinants, they will cause a shift in the demand curve, which means that we move to a new demand curve. Rightward shift, increase in demand. Leftward shift, decrease in demand. So a movement along the curve simply means that there's a movement from one point to the other on the same curve. So if it's an upward movement, it means that the price has increased. If it is a downward movement, the price has gone down. So a movement along the curve is associated with a change in the price of the specific product, which illustrates a change in quantity demanded. For instance, you can see there that our price is going up, so we have a movement from point A to point B along the same demand curve. Alright? A shift of the curve is caused by any other variable other than the price of the product, where we are saying you're now moving on to a new demand curve. So the other reasons, the price of related goods, household's income during the period, tastes and preferences of the consumers, the number of people in the household, and other possible influences of demand. So all these factors will shift the demand curve. Rightward shift, increase in demand. Leftward shift, decrease in demand. Then we move on to the supply function. Again, we can do the same analysis where we have an equation summarizing all the determinants of supply. So we are saying our quantity supplied is a function of price of the specific good, price of related goods, substitutes and complements or joint products, price of the factors of production, expected future price, and the state of the technology. So quantity supplied there is influenced by the price of the specific product, which is Px. So we want to look at the relationship there. So the higher the price, the higher the quantity that is supplied. So we have a positive relationship between the price of the product and the quantity that is supplied. So as the price is increasing, the quantity will also be increasing. When you look at supply, it is important to think like a producer. So supply is basically the production side of the economy. Think like a producer whose goal is to make profits. So whatever they do, they are trying to maximize their profits. When you look at demand, we are basically looking at the consumption side of the economy there. That is why we're saying the consumers are aiming to maximize their satisfaction. They are trying to get the best value of their money there. So the relationship there between quantity demanded and the price of the product is an inverse relationship. When the price increases for that specific product, the quantity that is demanded is going to decrease. So there's a negative relationship. But when you go to supply there's a positive relationship because the producer is trying to make the most out of the product that they are selling. So we say ceteris paribus, the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. Then you also look at price of related goods and services or alternative goods. We have products but that are substitutes or complements, but now in production, right? So here, if we have products that are substitutes in production, we are basically looking at products that are maybe produced by the same supplier. For an example, if we have HP laptops, HP can produce laptops or they can produce desktops. So we are going to look at how does an increase in the price of, for instance, laptops affect the supply of desktops. So if the price of laptops increases, it means that the production or the supply of desktop is going to decrease, because HP is going to focus on the laptops in which they are making their most money for. Then the supply of the other product will decrease. When you look at alternative products, we are talking about products that are produced together, right? For example, sugar and molasses. If the price of sugar increases, it means that the supply of molasses is also going to increase, because that is a joint product. The more sugar we produce, the more the molasses we are also going to extract from that production process. Then you also look at the prices of the factors of production, PF. As the price of the factors of production increase, it means that it is going to be very costly for the producer to continue producing. Some firms might even close if they cannot afford to buy the machinery, if they cannot afford to pay the workers, right? We're going to find that workers starting demanding higher salaries and wages. Some firms will not be able to afford, which eventually is going to result in a decrease in the supply, right? So supply will decrease there. Expected future price of the product. If the producers expect the future price to increase in the short run, they might hold on to their product. So supply will decrease in the short run, and in the long run, when the price has gone up, then they can supply more. State of the technology. The better the technology that we are using, the more that we are able to produce and supply, because we are now operating more efficiently. Right? There are other factors as well, such as the number of suppliers. If the number of suppliers increase, then it means supply will also increase. Again, when you look at supply, you can also look at the difference between a movement and a shift of the supply curve, right? The price of the product, of the specific product, is the only determinant that causes a movement along the supply curve. Any other factor will cause a shift in supply, increase in supply, rightward shift, decrease in supply, leftward shift. Right, then we move on to putting everything together now. Our supply and our demand. So we now look at market equilibrium. So at equilibrium, our quantity that is supplied is equal to the quantity that is demanded. So if you look at this diagram that is on the slide, you find that our equilibrium price for tomatoes there is 5 rand, because at that point there, that is where our quantity supplied is exactly equal to our quantity that is demanded, right? If, say, for some reason our price goes down to 2 rand, it means that the producers are not going to be willing to produce, because it's a lower price. But because it's a lower price, the consumers are going to demand more. So we are going to have excess demand in the market. So whenever we have excess demand in the market, it means that there's a shortage in the market. It's like people are at an auction. When you're at an auction, when there are a few items that are available and there are many buyers, what is going to happen there is it is going to put an upward pressure on price. So it's like this is the invisible hand, according to Adam Smith. The market forces that control the prices, that determines the prices. So as the prices, as there's an upward pressure there, as the prices are increasing, the quantity demanded will start to decrease, and at the same time the quantity supplied will start to increase as well. So that is why we have those upward pointing arrows there until we reach equilibrium. At equilibrium, we are saying we are in a state of rest or state of balance. Again, if the price is higher, let's say the price is 7 rand, this is a higher price, the consumers are going to demand less, but the suppliers are going to supply more because it's a higher price. So there's excess supply in the market. As long as we have excess supply in the market or a surplus of tomatoes, it means that is going to put a downward pressure on price. We have seen this when tomatoes are in season, we buy them at a cheaper price. As suppliers are trying to offload the tomatoes there, this is going to put a downward pressure on price. As the price is decreasing, the quantity supplied will be decreasing, and the quantity demanded will also be increasing until we reach equilibrium there. So that is the market equilibrium. All right. Then you also have consumer surplus and producer surplus. So when you look at consumer surplus, it's basically the area that is under the demand curve but above the market price. So a surplus is basically sort of an excess that is created, or a profit that producers make. So if you look at consumer surplus, you're saying an example of consumer surplus is whereby, let's say you want to buy a CD, right? You're expecting that the CD is going to cost you maybe 300 Rand, but when you go to the shop there, you find that it is 200 Rand. So it's like you've made a saving of 100 Rand. So that shaded area there, that triangle, is the consumer surplus. Producer surplus, same thing. The producer was expecting to sell at a lower price, but when they took the product to the market, they actually sold it at a higher price. So it means they made more profit than what they were anticipating. So producer surplus is the area that is above the supply curve but below the market price. Okay, then we have changes in demand, supply, and the equilibrium. So when you look at these changes in demand, you are now basically looking at those factors that were the determinants of demand. Right? You get a question there. What you need to do is you need to be able to determine first what is changing. Is it demand or is it supply? Right? If demand is increasing, it means it's a rightward shift. So you draw your original equilibrium, then after that you shift your demand curve. If it's supply, you're talking about production and so forth. Then you can also have simultaneous changes in demand and supply, whereby both demand is changing and supply is also changing. Then you also have minimum and maximum prices. When you look at minimum prices, we are talking about the fact that we want to help the producers. So minimum prices are always set above the equilibrium price, trying to help the producers, especially the farmers, so that they can at least get a reasonable income, because agricultural prices normally fluctuate a lot. Then you also have maximum prices, whereby the government is simply saying this product is a basic commodity, it cannot be sold at that price is too high, so they put a maximum price there, that is below equilibrium. If a minimum price is set below equilibrium, it will have no effect. If a maximum price is set above equilibrium, it will have no effect. All right, so we now move on to the assignment. Right, so the assignment there, I'm sure you have written assignments before in IMM. All right, the first thing that we need to do there is you go to your referencing guide. We do our referencing, which is both in text referencing as well as the list of references at the end, because you are going to lose a lot of marks if you don't do that. So it is very important for you to do the referencing of your assignment. Follow all these instructions that are given, even on the questions as well as on the cover page for the assignment. Right? When you draw graphs, make sure that those graphs are fully labeled, because you get marks just from the labeling of the graphs. If they are not labeled fully, then you're going to lose marks. Again, we are going to look at the instructions as we proceed. Right, so we're going to look at the first question. When you're answering these questions, right, it is also important for you to take note of the mark allocation. If a question says 3 marks, you cannot just write one line and expect to get those 3 marks there. So first, look at the mark allocation. How many marks have been allocated for this, right? Also, do your assignment on time. The people that are going to score highly are the people that start their assignments early, because if you do it last minute, you are rushing, maybe you have work commitments, then it is not going to be very helpful. All right, so when you look at the first question there, which is basically referring to definitions, right, this is very straightforward. I don't think we have challenges with that. All right, so the first question says define the following concept and give an example of each. So define, right, you are describing what the concept is, and don't forget to give an example, because the moment you don't give an example, you're already losing 1 mark. So give an example of each. For question 1, when you look at microeconomics, you should consult page 4 to 5 in your textbook. Then public goods, consult page 9. Positive statement, right? You can just read around those positive statements, which is basically, when you refer to a positive statement, it's a statement of fact, right? Something that can be proven empirically. Then ceteris paribus, you go to page 24. Equilibrium, page 23 to 24, you're going to get that. Then we move on to question 2. Question 2 says, redraw the following production possibility curves diagram by hand for country J and answer the questions which follow. Alright, the question there says redraw. So it means that when you have written your question 1, leave a space where you are going to draw your graph, because it is better for you to draw by hand so that you are able to come up with that nice concave there, because that is what the PPC is all about. So make sure that you draw it nicely by hand. Okay, then the whole idea about the PPC, you're going to get it from page 13 to page 19. So you redraw your PPC, you label it as it is given there, right? Then we move on to question 2.1. It says, using PPC AF, describe points A and F. Right. So what you basically need to understand there is point A and F, those are extreme points where we are using all our resources only to produce one good and none of the other. So those are the extreme points there that you need to take care of. That is how you are supposed to describe it. Then you move on to 2.2. Using PPC AF, describe points D and C. Right, point D is inside the PPC. Right, what does it represent? Right, if you listen to the presentation initially, there said point D, which is inside the PPC, talks about unemployment of resources. Right, point C, which is beyond the PPC, is what showing us scarcity there. But you need to describe these things. Why are you saying that? Then you move on to question 2.3. Using PPC AF, describe the movement from AB in terms of opportunity cost. Remember, opportunity cost is the value of the sacrifice. So if you are moving from point A to B, what are we giving up? Okay, that is the opportunity cost, which is basically the difference between the 200 and the 160 there, for us to get the 40 belts. Right, then we move on to question 2.4. Using PPC AF, describe the movement from B to E in terms of opportunity cost. Again, similar question. What is the value of the sacrifice there? Moving from point B to E, which is basically the difference between 160 and 100. Then, but you're also describing why you're saying that. Alright. Then 2.5, use your answers to 2.3 and 2.4 to describe the non-linear nature of the PPC. When you talk about the non-linear nature of the PPC, we are basically referring to the concave shape of the PPC. Why it is concave like that. Alright. So if you go into your textbook there, page 15, right, you can look at the fact that as you move down the PPC there, your opportunity cost will be increasing, right? So we are talking about the non-linear nature of that, which is concave in shape, shows us increasing opportunity cost. As we move down the PPC there, the resources become more specialized in the production of belts. That is why we now need to sacrifice more of the shoes there. So the specialization and division of labor there. You can even go on to briefly describe what specialization and division of labor is, if you still have the space to do so. Alright, so the PPC is concave, which means it bulges outwards. It's not a straight line, showing us increasing opportunity cost. Then we move on to 2.6. It says describe a possible cause of the swing of PPC AF to PPC AG. Right, we are now talking about those shifts. Right, so you are describing one of those. You can describe the effect that there are no more resources. You can describe the fact that if there's improved production techniques, there's improved productivity, workers have become more skilled, and so forth and so forth. So you describe that. It means that you are now able to produce more belts. 2.7, describe the outcome of the swing from PPC AF to PPC AG in terms of points B, E, and C. So as we move to point AG there, to PPC AG, it means that previously point B and E were on the PPC, now they are inside the PPC, so they become inefficient. Point C, which was previously unattainable, becomes efficient and attainable, right, because of the shift. Then we move on to question 3. Question 3 says, redraw the following graph by hand and answer the questions that follow. Basically, when you look at question 3 there, we are from page 71 to page 73 in our textbook. So we have market equilibrium there. We have our downward sloping demand curve, upward sloping supply curve. Our equilibrium price is 30. Then we are given another price which is 10 Rand, another price which is 50 Rand there. So 3.1 says, describe the forces that will be set in motion if the market price was 50 Rand. So you are basically describing the market forces that come into play when you have a market surplus, right? When you have excess demand, what does it do to price? You are not describing those arrows there until we reach equilibrium. Then you move on to 3.2. Describe the forces that will be set in motion if the market price was 10 Rand. It's a lower price, right? It means that there's a market shortage, there's excess demand in the market. Now describe the adjustment mechanism that is going to happen until again we reach equilibrium, which is 30 Rand. Okay? Then we move on to 3.3. Describe the outcome of a price ceiling. Describe the outcome if a price ceiling was set at 50 Rand. So this question is simply testing you whether you know where we should set the maximum price. Is it set above equilibrium or is it set below equilibrium? If it is above equilibrium, is it going to have an effect or not? That is what the question is testing. Then 3.4, describe the outcome if a price ceiling was set at 10 Rand. So now if you set a price ceiling at 10 Rand, it means now that invisible hand, those market forces that result in the adjustment mechanism are no longer going to be able to operate in this market, because there's a regulation that says price cannot go above 10 Rand. So how do the authorities now deal with that shortage that is in the market? So you describe what is going to happen there, the black market activities and so forth. 3.5, describe the outcome if a price floor was set at 50, right? A price floor has been set at 50 Rand. Again, there's going to be a surplus in the market. But remember now, because this is a regulation that has been put in place by the government, that adjustment mechanism is also not going to happen, right? How do we then deal with that surplus that is in the market? Describe the outcome. There are 3.6. Describe the outcome if the price floor was set at 10 Rand. Again, this one is simply testing whether you know where the price floor is supposed to be set. Is it above equilibrium? Is it below equilibrium? If it is set below equilibrium, does it have any effect? Right? Then we move on to 3.7. 3.7 says, use your graph to illustrate and describe. So illustrate means you are drawing, then describe, you are now explaining or describing what you have just drawn there. What would happen to consumer demand if the price of coffee substitute decreased? So you remember you have redrawn this diagram in your on your answer book or whatever you're using, right? So you now need to show that your diagram is for tea. So what happens if the price of coffee decreases? How does, remember these two goods are substitutes in consumption, how does that affect the demand for tea? Now that coffee is now cheaper, what is going to happen to the demand for tea? You illustrate that on the graph. Demand is going to decrease. Then you illustrate that. You illustrate the new equilibrium on that demand curve, right? What happens to price at that new equilibrium? What happens to quantity? Then 3.8 says use the same graph. So you are not drawing another graph. You are still using the same graph that we have redrawn. Use the same graph to illustrate and describe what would happen to supply if adverse weather affected the tea crops. How does adverse or bad weather conditions affect supply? Obviously, they are going to affect it in a negative way. Then you illustrate that on your supply curve. So it's now a shift. You explain first the shift without combining the shift in demand. So you only look at the shift in supply in isolation initially. Then after that, you can now give a description as if they were happening together, where you now have a simultaneous change. Right? Simultaneous change, you can read about them on page 88 in your textbook, where we are now saying both demand and supply are changing at the same time. Initially describe only the shift in supply. Initially describe the shift in demand in isolation, the shift in supply in isolation. Then after that, you describe the simultaneous shift as if they have happened at the same time in supply and demand. All right, those graphs, you'll find them. An example of those graphs is on page 88, where both supply and demand are changing. All right. Then we move on to question 4. Question 4 says discuss, okay? It's an open question. Discuss South Africa's resource endowment under the following headings. Each section should contain a full description of the resource. So that is the first part, you underline that. Full description of the resource. Remuneration that is associated with that. So that is the income that accrues to each factor. Then blend of South African facts. So your full description there is a theoretical description of the resource there, entrepreneurship, capital, and natural resources. Then after that, you give remuneration, a theoretical description of that. Then blend of South African facts. You're now coming in, now you're doing your research about South Africa, referring to these three factors: entrepreneurship, capital, and natural resources. For you to show that you have researched, you need to put in some statistics there. That is what shows that someone has researched. Also, don't go and copy and paste. Anyone can see that you have copied and pasted there. For example, if you read a paragraph that says, as I was saying before, where were you saying that? So ensure that you don't do copy and paste, because you will lose marks. Referencing, in-text referencing, also consult those websites that have been put for you there, and you can even consult other websites